Future's now, old man.
What it do? Tick, tick, boom. This is the Future First podcast where we are helping you win today with a future first mindset. I'm your co-host, Jmac, here with my co-host, Jose. What's going on, dude?
Hey, Jmac, I'm good, man. How you been?
Bro, I've been real good. Things have been going. The leagues are going into playoff mode. We're in the last 5 weeks here before playoff hits, so it's crunch time, man. And I'm looking forward to these episodes we got coming up here to kind of help you guys get into that. What about you, bud?
Yeah, same, man. It's getting that time of the season where you start really needing to make those type of moves to try to win the whole thing. If that's what the position you're in, and if your team is kind of falling off, as we were talking about in previous episodes, is a great one. We make sure you're tuned in because we're gonna have a lot of great info, and whether you're competing or looking to be rebuilding, what you should be doing as the trade deadline approaches. So.
Yeah, man. Um, yeah, trade deadlines. I guess I don't know. Real quick, like how do you feel about those, man?
Yeah, I mean they're like whatever. I don't have a super strong feeling. I think for the most part I probably lean on having a trade deadline. I think it just keeps everything more on the up and up, and keeps people from kind of doing stupid things, I guess, as we get into the playoffs, right? Feel like there's less likelihood for people, especially in leagues with randoms, or leagues with not people you've known for quite a while. I think it just helps keeps everything um, on the clear in terms of any weird things happening with trades.
Yeah, no, I get it. Like they do feel necessary in some leagues, but I like the leagues where they don't have them the most. I think those ones are my favorite, where you get to go up until whenever it happens. But yeah, I don't know, man. I guess it's a flavor, right? If you like it, if you like the spice, it's for you. But if not, then if you have those trade deadlines, we're going to help you walk through it here. But first, if you're watching on YouTube, touch down on that like button, go for two on that subscribe, and don't forget to leave a comment. Shout out to Fox here, who's been helping us with our graphics. You can follow her on X at bfoxworth07. We're also on Spotify and Apple Pods. Follow, rate the show, drop a 5-star review, all of the above. All right, man, let's get into this jam-packed episode we got here. We're going to go over a quick high-level view of where the market stands before we get into our trade deadline talk here. But first, as always, the quick hit, man. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right, man. Today on the quick hit, we wanted to go over, I don't know, what I thought was an interesting discussion. I threw it all over the place, asking who people preferred in Dynasty versus Brees Hall or Bucky Irving. And this one kind of came up here because what really sparked it was a trade offer we had in one of our leagues. We have Brees Hall. We were offered Bucky Irving for Brees Hall in two different ways. One as a bigger package, and a second one just an individual straight up trade. It really got me thinking about who I would want long term. I think a lot of people would agree that Brees Hall is the better talent, but Bucky may be in a better situation, especially after the NFL trade deadline came and gone, and Brees Hall is still a New York Jet. So we were kind of talking about it, and I threw it over to you to ask you who you preferred. And I was a little bit surprised by your answer, but why don't you go ahead and tell me here why you think Brees is the better keep in Dynasty?
Yeah, I think it's just that part of in terms of maybe especially in the context of that league, it's not looking like we're going to be competitive next year. It's probably looking more like a 2027 ascension into contention. And I think by then, Brees Hall could definitely find himself in a much better situation. I do think that Bucky Irving next year probably has a better fantasy finish than Brees, but we're not worried too much about it. And in general, I don't really see Bucky Irving in terms of his talent as like a top five, right? Dynasty and fantasy is a short-term memory, but and you kind of have to play like that sometimes. But Brees was viewed as a top five Dynasty running back.
Yeah.
What was it, like 2 years ago? Obviously that, or a year and a half ago. Obviously playing for the Jets, it's not looking like he's gonna really ever get to his full potential there. But I think he just still has that ability, right? Like coming back from the injury, we saw it post-injury. We've seen it in games where the offense has been able to stay on the field and sustain drives where he's had the target share and the workload. You still see that talent. And so to me, you're looking at in 2 years, Brees Hall still, I think, being a dynasty and valuable in dynasty in terms of what he might produce. So that just was my main thought. I think one of the other things we'd also talked about is trading him for Bucky, who's still not playing, and it takes points away for our points for, which was a big consideration. But then maybe turning around and selling him or selling other players, and just the the horrible experience we've had trying to trade running backs in that league just made me think like
Yeah.
Brees might just be a guy we can hold on to, and he can be part of the rebuild and be a usable player for us in 2 years. Like I don't think like if you compare to how you might feel about a Kenneth Walker, for example, like in 2 years, who knows what Kenneth Walker is, right? I think Bucky and Brees Hall will still both be fantasy relevant, but just given the talent of Brees, I think he has more ability to do a Saquon, go to another team, go to a better situation in 2 years, and then become like this fantasy darling that is kind of rising from the ashes of having to play in New York.
Yeah. Okay. Now that you explain it, that makes a lot more sense because I think you were saying things specifically in the context of that league for Brees over Bucky. And yeah, for the context of where that team is at, where our team is at, I think it makes a ton of sense, especially given how stagnant the trade market is in that league. I was looking at this question a little more like wholesale, just kind of overall, and who I think is the better dynasty asset, at least for now in the immediate future. And I took a more short-term approach, as I tend to do. I think I play this game a little more value-based, rather than playing for skill players all the time. My theory is if I can play the value game, I'll always have the players or the assets necessary to get into that production when I feel like I have the push or the need to push into contention. And when I step back and looked at it at that point of view, Bucky feels like in this next offseason, he'll have an easier way to explain away the production or the lack of production for this season based on him being injured. Whereas Brees Hall, the narrative has changed already around him. Him being stuck on the Jets is not good for his outlook. I mean, when their trade rumors were flying that the Chiefs were looking for Brees, his value spiked real quick. And then the trade deadline passed and that value went right back down. I mean, the hope for Brees just kind of sunk in the toilet. And I don't think that gets explained away in the offseason. I think the value for Brees falls further based on that. I guess the wild card here is what the Jets do in the draft next year with their treasure trove of picks that they have. If they make some significant changes to the team where we feel good about his situation, then that might change. But my thought process here was just to take who I think will be the more valuable asset in the offseason, and I can use that value and distribute it however I see fit then. Which I understand is probably not maybe the most popular approach to take things, but that's just kind of how I view Dynasty, and it's fun to get these two different sides, and I think that's why we make really good co-managers here in our teams and stuff, because we have the yin and the yang, so to speak.
And this also speaks to the league makeups of people that you're playing with, right? This is why whenever we talk trades, whenever we talk about these sorts of things, playing in leagues that are invested where you can get to know people, you don't need to know their kids' names or anything, but like just knowing them, right? Like if you approached us, right, in different contexts, we would be totally different managers when
Yeah.
handling this situation. So it's just worth knowing, how do people in your league think about these things, and that's like going to be extremely important in these next segments that we're going to be talking about here.
Yeah. Let's jump into those segments. What do you think?
Let's do it.
All right. First up on the dock today, we got the market meta, where we're going to take a quick view and step back and evaluate the current state of the market from a high level view. We don't want to react to the market, we want to analyze it. So we're going to look at this top down, identify the market efficiencies, and we're going to plan an attack to target these inefficiencies. And I don't know about you, Jose, but the way the fantasy season has shaken down and the NFL season, there's been a lot of high-end talent that just has been a bust for a number of reasons. And to me, that just speaks to a rebuilder's market. Especially if you still believe in these high-end talents, like I think a lot of us do. And there's a number of reasons for these high-end talents to be busting. I mean, we've had 3 season-ending injuries to first-round picks in Burrow, Jaden Daniels, and Neighbors. All of those guys are extremely attainable right now for a reasonable price. On top of that, we have underperforming wide receivers. The top 12 in August looks completely different to what the top 12 is now. You have Brian Thomas Jr. just falling out, bottom falling out there. Drake London, his value's been up and down. Nico Collins hasn't quite been there, and instead you have guys taking his place with like JSN ascending into that, who looks real and legit. But then you have other guys like Michael Pittman Jr. in the top 12, and George Pickens in the top 12, who's kind of found his way there from, the lack of CD targets over there. So all this is just kind of shaking up the market, where if you still believe in those underperforming wide receivers, I think that there's a lot of room to kind of move into those top end assets. I guess before we move into some examples here and how we can kind of get into these type of players, do you see the same things I'm seeing, or is there something else there that there kind of speaks to this but doesn't I haven't mentioned here?
No, I think it's a pretty good analysis of how things have played out during the season. Like you have, I mean, it happens every season, but I think this season there's definitely for Dynasty a lot of players who you can kind of go make call your shot, right? And it's one of those things where these are the moments where you'd make a trade and then you look at it back next year, you look back at it in 2 years, or somebody looks at the league history and they're like, wait, you got Brian Thomas for what? And now he's a top 5 wide receiver, right? Like those are the type of gambles that you have to make. Like, do you really think, as we've been talking about here, that Brian Thomas Jr. is still an elite as he showed, or was he just a flash in the pan? He got us for one season and now now he's done. Obviously, that's a little bit more safe bet with some of the other guys you mentioned that were injured, because I think they've proven it. But JD5 is definitely somebody who I would definitely check on, because he's been injured. He had one good season. Somebody could be panicking, as we've talked about in another episode. But yeah, I completely agree. I think there's been a big shuffle at the top, more so maybe than previous years with the wide receivers, especially. Some of the names there are very surprising. And those other guys you mentioned, Nico and Drake London, like Nico specifically had me scared coming into the year with his value, like what people thought of him, and what he's been showing and what that offense has been showing has been extremely troubling. He's one that if you are either a rebuild, whatever position, I might be looking specifically at Nico Collins if he has retained any of his like value compared to how he's performed. He'd be somebody I'd be looking to definitely move off of. But I think your analysis of like what the market is doing, and it's favorable to a rebuilder, where if you hit on one of these underperforming players and buy low, so to speak, it could jumpstart your rebuild in a way that you don't have to be waiting maybe an extra year as you thought.
Yeah, for sure. And what's fueling all of this is contenders who need points now. They came into the season with these elite assets on their hands who have either been hurt or are underperforming, and it's just not working for them. They need to get, you know, people who are producing, players who are putting up the numbers on their teams so that they can continue their contention push. So, with that in mind, we're trying to attack these contenders who have these kind of assets on their team and send them other assets that are going to be producing to try to get into these elite players here. And we have a couple examples here. I have 3 examples here from my leagues, and these first 3 are all in the same best ball league that I'm in. It's a 12 by 11 PPR tight end premium. And I've been talking about these ones a little bit here on the show already. But in week 4 of this year, I sent DeAndre Swift, Jalen Warren, Zay Flowers, and Tedero McMillan for CeeDee Lamb and a 27 first. CeeDee Lamb was injured at the time, and it made a lot more sense back then. Even looking back at it now, it still feels like a trade that I would make even to this day. I mean, I got what I consider 4 firsts worth for uh, Swift, Warren, Zay, and T-Mac. At best 2.5 firsts in my eyes. Maybe 3, I guess. So that one is one that I would redo in a heartbeat. The second one here was I got into neighbors. I sent Sam Darnold, Jerry Jeudy, Ken Walker, and Ricky Pearsall for neighbors in a 27 first in week 5. That was right after neighbors went down for his injury. That one, just looking back at it, just feels like an absolute steal. And then the last one here, I was talking about how I got into Tucker Kraft, and it was Marcus Mariota, Dallas Goedert, a 26 second, a 26 third for Tucker Kraft. And again, these are I'm just looking at players that are producing, and it's a little bit easier in best ball because you're trying to just put any kind of talent on the squad that can kind of hit your lineup. So in best ball, it's a little bit easier to kind of get these because there's a lot less significance held into these top elite assets. But nonetheless, and this last one was done in a league that we co-managed together, a 12 by 11 Superflex PPR tight end premium. We made this in week 6. We sent Dak Prescott, Saquon Barkley, JJ McCarthy, Theo Johnson, and a 26 first. Quite a big package there. And we got back Joe Burrow and Brock Bowers. And at that time, Brock Bowers was still injured. No word on kind of when he was coming back. Obviously, Burrow's done for the season. But we sent pretty good capital there. Yeah. That one I think is going to look a lot better, come next season. I think even this season right now, you kind of look back at it and you're like, wow, Barkley, Prescott, McCarthy, Theo Johnson, and a first. I don't know. How do you look at that trade looking back at it right now? Do you still like that trade, or, how do you break that down, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think it accomplished the goal of what we're doing, which is rebuilding for the future. Like in 2 years, Prescott, Barkley, right? This is the same league I was talking about earlier with the Bucky, Brees Hall situation, where we're not looking to compete next year. Prescott and Barkley in 2 years, I think they're going to be past their prime. I think that, Barkley's going to be into his year 30, if not 31. Prescott's going to be pushing upwards of 36, 37, right? Though he still looks like a decent quarterback. The only player really that makes me hesitant in terms of the future and how it could make the trade look is McCarthy. But I think in 2027, even if McCarthy's a solidified like QB2 in a super flex, as long as he's not, a Joe Burrow, because then we pretty much just traded a Joe Burrow for a younger Joe Burrow and then Bowers for all the other pieces. I feel pretty good about it. I think it makes a lot of sense. Burrow being out for literally the rest of the fantasy season really tanks our points for it compared to Prescott and Barkley. Yeah. And now McCarthy who's playing. Bowers is going to be up and down with, Geno Smith at quarterback. So I really like it. I mean, these are the ones that a couple of these that you mentioned, just I think we talked about it, but not on the air. Like a neighbors plus the 27 first for that package seems like a steal. And then CD plus a first. I mean, the fact that all of these trades include you not just getting the lead asset, the best player in the entire trade, but then at first on top, I think is pretty wild, and especially being a 27 first, which is the dynasty community as a whole, which I think maybe we need to do an episode, or maybe this is an off-season topic, but just to put a pin in it, like the wildness of everybody in my league is saying, I don't want a 26 first, I want a 27 first. Like the hype for that class, I think is really devaluing 26 picks. So I think if you're you're willing to be a little bit brave, I think you can maybe stockpile 26 picks, flip in 27 picks, and really abuse the market's hungriness for the elite wide receivers, which, don't get me wrong, like those are definitely the players. But I think if you look at your league and you're not going to be a bottom team like the 101 in 27, I think maybe stockpiling picks that are becoming greatly depreciated before we even know who's going to be in the draft class might be a smart move. But I love all those trades, honestly. Like as a rebuilder, moving on from almost all aging assets, like the only guys that might be relevant in a year or two and for fantasy that you traded away are like the Zay Flowers, sorry, and Tmac, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I think they all make a lot of sense. They're a great process. And they're the way you want to rebuild, because now you have a cornerstone piece and you have a future pick to either liquidate if you come into contending faster than you thought, or to make a great pick, or at least another shot. I have a similar trade. I talked about it slightly. I mean, I've been on Brian Thomas, so I like to practice what I preach. I had a team that was 11-2 or 8-2. I can't remember when I decided to make the trade. We played with median, so that's how we had so many games. I was in third place, but I'm glad I did it, because I hadn't lost Mike Evans yet. I hadn't lost Chuba Hubbard as a starter yet, but I had lost Tyreek Hill, James Conner, and a bunch of other players. And I realized that it just wasn't going to happen this year. The teams above me, or who I was competing with, were just very clearly going to wreck me in the playoffs, and I still had a chance to tank out of a playoff seed. My points for are probably going to be too high to have a strong pick, but it was just a team that if I waited until the next offseason, some of the players that I would be trading away would be literally worthless in terms of how they're valued now. So I sent Saquon Barkley, let me make sure I read the rate trade correctly. Devontae Adams, Derrick Henry, George Kittle, and Saquon Barkley for 2 firsts and Brian Thomas. To me,
Sheesh.
yeah, I feel like you said, like counting first, that's about 4 firsts. If we're valuing Brian Thomas as not the elite players, like some of the guys you got back, it feels like 4 firsts for Derrick Henry and Devontae Adams, who, Devontae Adams is like, if he stays with the Rams, he probably has another year of production. But Derrick Henry, I think in terms of his value in the offseason, unless something crazy happens toward the end of the season, is probably close to nothing. In this league particularly, nobody valued Kittle in any sort of meaningful way. So another year on top of that wouldn't add anything. And then another year on top of Barkley after having a down year just seemed like strike while the iron's hot, and it didn't feel like there would be any better moment than right now to make that deal. I was also trying to deal Mahomes, but I think we're seeing the resurgence of Mahomes' career in terms of fantasy wise. So I wasn't ready to sell for cheap, especially selling to the guy, which is part of the way you guys got to always keep in mind who are you selling to. Like, do the math, because selling to the guy that's like in third or fourth place, who maybe ends up finishing, and you end up with the 108, is a lot different than the selling to the clear favorite who's going to be the 112. Because now you have a 112 and a 212, so you basically have an early second, or a late first and a late second compared to what you could have selling to somebody else. So I think making those sorts of moves, it's like same as you, right? Like you got the young elite player who you still believe in. Your guys are obviously more contrasted, more set as elite players, but then you get the picks on top of it. And I think that's the clear way to rebuild. And I think based on everything we're talking about here, there's a lot of opportunities for that. Obviously, Neighbors was somebody to go get. a while back, but maybe he's still on a contending team that's still, making a push. And so now they weren't ready to sell when Neighbors first got hurt because they're like, oh, I lost my best player. Maybe I have no shot. Now they kept winning. Now they're in third or second or fourth place. And, I mean, these are the type of things where you got to get a little, social, like throw it in there. Like, hey, man, you look like you're right there, man. I got pieces. Do you want to go win the championship? Like I always put it, maybe this is cheesy. I don't know. I don't care. I always put it as like, hey, man, like, if you make a trade, like this is you going to win the championship. And after I make a trade with people, I was like, good luck, man. I hope you win it all. Like it's going to be your year. Like, I don't know. Maybe nobody cares about that. Maybe it doesn't. But I think psychologically speaking, like sometimes that's what people need to hear, right? They need to hear like, oh, dang, like, yeah, I can do it. All I need is a Saquon. All I need is a Derrick Henry or in the Devontae Adams or whatever, groups of players you're trading to make the deal work.
I didn't know you were in sales.
And only in Dynasty, man. That's the only.
Okay. All right. I got you. All right, man. No, man, I love everything about what you were just talking about there. And yeah, as far as talking about selling these players, I'm just gonna save it for the deadline dynamics here, so we can jump into this next segment because it's a beast here, and I want to make sure we get into it and give it the proper time to get it done. So let's jump into that here, man. All right, the deadline dynamics, where we figure out how to play the market and take advantage of the lucrative trade window before the deadline. We're here to help you navigate the most pivotal point in the season, helping you break down the timing and how to leverage all of it to your advantage here. Obviously, I think, this needs to be framed into a few different conversations here, whether that's your contending or rebuilding. Contenders are looking to buy the short-term production here, and the rebuilders are looking to sell for liquidity and more fungible assets who are insulated and can kind of retain value into their future here. I guess a good question to ask though is who's actually honest about their window and where they're at in it. And I think that kind of goes back to where you're talking about, like, what are you getting back in the 112 or the 108? And what I wanted to kind of push back from that previous segment into here was you were thinking about sending away Patrick Mahomes. And that needs to be considered not only, like you said, who you're sending it to, but how that trade is going to impact their team too. If they were only a quarterback away and they were previously seen as like the 108 or the 110, well, you got to remember you're giving them that piece now to kind of push them over the top. So you can't view their picks that you're getting back from them in the same light as before that trade as after that trade. So taking all that into account, I think is really, really smart. And you were kind of hitting the nail on the head there. Yeah. Is there any other ways that you try to take advantage of who's being honest about their window?
Yeah, I mean, I just try to, like, you analyze the team and you think like, who is the person that could be lying to themselves, right? Like honestly, if I'm a rebuilder and I'm on towards the bottom of the standings, I really want to see maybe a guy at the top that's not too far ahead so nobody thinks they can catch him, but a really tight like 6 or 7 teams that are all within 1 win of each other or 2 wins, right? Because then you can really aim for the teams that you really think are not going to make it. Because imagine you're trading assets to a team who's a playoff hopeful and then they just missed the playoffs. Now you secured a 106, and depending, I don't know, however things play out and however your league decides what players who and who gets what pick out of the teams that don't make the playoffs, you could just strike gold and all of a sudden you turn some assets into a team and now it's a 103, 104, 105, right? So that's how I analyze that, like looking at my team, looking at my team and then looking at the league. Right, I aim to share my players with the bottom half of those playoff teams, right? Like even if you give the players to the team that gets eliminated in the first round, right? That's a big difference between the guy that might win the championship or the guy that might come in second. So like even those 2 or 3 different picks, I think can really make a difference down the road. So those are the type of things. And like you said, like also analyze like is the team bad enough that I'm giving them pieces, but I'm not filling their biggest holes or what you identify as their biggest holes to then, catapult them really into contention, right? Like you want to sell pieces to contenders, and sometimes only the really, really top end contenders want to come buy them. And I think it's still worth selling, even if it's not like the best scenario, because you need to move these pieces because you need to rebuild. But if there's a chance to, to sell it to a less guaranteed contender, that's obviously what you want to be doing, right? You don't want to just take the first offer that comes around for your pieces and give it to the guy who's already 11-0 and it's very clearly the best team, right? Because there might be a better deal out there.
Yeah, no, that's great for when you're selling and trying to value those picks. And kind of I wanted to bring up something kind of on the flip side of that too. And this is kind of a dangerous game to play because you can end up insulting a manager sometimes. But when you have someone who thinks they're a contender, but they may not be, having that discussion with them, approaching it softly, first of all, but having that discussion with them can kind of help lubricate that trade to get those players that you want on their squad onto your team for that contention run. And I've had that happen in one of my leagues here already, actually in Toe Clan. I'll just throw it out. This guy's been devastated by injuries, and he has Marcus Mariota as really his only starting quarterback right now. And I just sent an offer for him for a third. And he's like, hey man, have you seen my squad? It's like, all I have is Marcus Mariota. Like, I kind of need him. And he's in like 4th place right now. He's got a good record, because those guys got him to where he's at. And I was like, yeah, I have seen your roster. I was like, this was a trade, more for a play for the future kind of thing. Like, and he took it humbly and was saying like, it's hard to abandon the record that I have, but it's also hard to envision a playoff push with the roster that I have. So I don't know. The trade hasn't happened. He said he'd think about it, so I'll report back to you guys on that. But just those type of things that we're talking about here are going to help you make the most of this trade deadline, because there is an impending trade deadline where you have to make a decision. And that psychology plays into getting trades done, whether you're rebuilding or contending. So keep that in mind here moving forward, guys. Jose, is there anything else you wanted to touch on there before we move into what players we like for either situation?
Yeah, I mean, very quickly, I also think about that from like the other side. Like, if this guy is keyed on contending, like how can I squeeze him to maybe get a good asset for a quarterback that I don't really mind sending him as a contender, like a guy I don't mind facing across for me. And maybe you look at the playoff potential seeding, maybe you look at the quarterback you would be sending, but that's where a situation where maybe a contender with contender deal could get done and you could really squeeze some value out of them for your roster in the future or this current playoff push. But yeah, that would be my only thought with that particular scenario. But yeah, man, let's get into we're looking at the contenders, contending buying pieces, right? Like who are we looking to get on our teams to win it all?
Yeah, so let's jump into that. First, let's kind of break this up here into players that we can put on our squad that are really 1-year rental players. Hopefully you're getting these guys really cheap, put them on your squad so that you can use them for their production and not have to worry about their dynasty value for any reason after that. So we're going to call these guys rental players, and they're usually vets whose value will reset to 0 here after the playoffs. So we've kind of broken these out into positions here. We have some veteran QBs, and I have 3 that we put on here. Joe Flacco, Marcus Mariota, and we got Smoke Brisket.
Smoke Brisket got that sauce.
Of course, we're talking about Jacoby Brissett. But which one of these guys is probably your favorite to go after here, if any of them, Jose?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same guy that it's probably been for like the last few seasons. That's Joe Flacco. I mean, he just seems to get it done. Any team he goes to, they seem to just let him wing it. The Bengals are chasing a playoff spot. He's got the weapons for it, which is the most entertaining part. It doesn't really matter if you're not the Chaser, the Higgins owner. You don't care if he's flinging the ball 50 yards down the field and somebody's catching it for a touchdown. It doesn't matter what their name is, and he has it. I mean, he also has the ability, the mental psyche to like get the ball out quick and not be as troubled by the O line. Like he's not trying to do what Joe Burrow maybe needs to learn a little bit less and just take the easy play. Joe Burrow is also as smart as Joe Flacco. I think he just tries to save a play that his O line got him into, and I think Joe Flacco just like, hey man, I'm just chucking the ball. Let's go. Let's do the damn thing. Like, and
Where's
I think
Jamar Chase?
Exactly. Like he's gonna probably win people championships in super flex leagues. And if you just lost Jaden Daniels, I feel like he's like an awesome. Maybe it's too late. He's already on a contender team, but he's my replacement for any of these quarterbacks that are going down, especially on Daniels, who just went down.
Yeah, for sure. I think in any kind of lineup league, he would be my preferred go-to. I think I'd probably tackle Jacoby Brissett after that. I don't really trust Marcus Mariota and what the Commanders have going on over there, but any three of these guys in a best ball lineup, I'm more than fine. Happy putting them on my squad for a third or less. Honestly, for Flacco, I'd send 2/3. But yeah, I think that kind of attacks the QBs here. Honestly, too, guys, this is the time of the season where if they have backup QBs that are just sitting on waivers, this is the time of the year to stash them because more than likely they're going to come into relevancy here. So keep that in mind. All right, let's move on to the. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Just real quick, just maybe we should just hit on the top guy that we kind of identify in this. You think a third for Flacco is probably a pretty fair trade?
Smash.
Is that what you said? Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought. I mean, that's what I traded him for. This was a couple weeks ago. But yeah, let's keep going then.
For sure. No, I think Flacco is a huge smash for a third. I think I sold him for a third in a best ball league too, and I probably should have been able to get a little bit more looking back at it now. But hey, it is what it is. Process rules, and I'm not going to shy away from a third on a rebuilding squad. Okay, next here we got some running backs, and we're going to call them the starting insurance plays. And this first guy on here probably is elevated above an insurance play, but it's Rico Dowdle. And then we also got Rashad White and Kamani Vidal. All of these guys, I think, are fine plays to put on your squad. If you get, 2 or 3 starts out of these guys to help you get there, that's great. You might get more out of these guys, especially with Rico Dowdle. So I think obviously the answer here, who we want, is Rico Dowdle. But when you're factoring in price, because I think the price for him has been inflated, is there any one of these 3 that you liked more than the other?
I think it's still Rico. Like I talked about before, I bought him and a guy we're going to talk about in the next segment together for a second, which now feels like pretty scandalous given what Rico's doing. But I actually would just push back on him being in this like rental. He is on a rental from Jesus, where is he playing? The Panthers. Wow, the Panthers. But I think he's playing himself into getting more consideration and getting a decent contract. Like Rico Dowdle in Houston next year. That would be, I think, exciting. So I think you could also be seeing him as he's not like old like some of these guys who you think are just turning to dust. Obviously, he's not like the super sexy name, but I think if he continues to play the way he's doing in terms of what he's doing on the NFL field, I think it would suck if he gets re-signed to the Panthers because Chuba is still owed money and that's going to be a timeshare. But I think if not, Rico Dowdle could be playing himself into fantasy relevance even into next year. Obviously, it's a gamble, but I think it's a gamble where because his price is elevated doing what he's doing, I'm okay paying it more so like a second and then maybe a third. I don't know exactly what, I have him on a rebuilding team. And if I can get a second, that's kind of what I've been okay. Nobody's offered it to me yet. I think they're kind of waiting for the shoe to drop with Chuba Hubbard, but it just doesn't look like everything that the coach is saying, everything that they're doing on the field, that Chuba Hubbard is really going to be in consideration, at least in the short term. So yeah, I would be okay as a contender though, buying Rico at his price. I mean, I'm not paying a first, I'll send a second, but that's kind of where I would kind of draw that line.
Yeah, I like that. I think Rico Dowdle is the answer here. It's hard because they did just give Chuba a big contract. It's hard to see them signing Rico Dowdle. I don't think that's what's going to be best for him. I hope he moves on and he gets a contract somewhere else because they still have, Jonathan Brooks, who I think they're looking to get back if he can come back from that ACL. Probably not, but I think of these other guys here. Kamani Vidal would be the guy that I would look to here because I don't know if Omarion Hampton comes back this year. If he does come back, it's obviously not going to be into the playoffs. So Kamani Vidal is more push to get you into the playoffs. So maybe if you're not a serious contender, but you just need that upside play to make you get to push to get into that top six, I think he's the guy to go to there. All right, let's keep rolling here. We have some wide receivers here who are seeing an increased role. The three that I have noted here are Romeo Dobbs, Alec Pierce, and Wandale Robinson. I have a feeling I know where you're going on this one. We talked about him on the last show, but go ahead and give me your favorite play here of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dobbs is it. I think Alec Pierce is also turning himself into not just a best ball bro type of play. I think he is a lineup player that you can start decently confident with how Daniel Jones and that offense is playing. He seems to be the clear second. I know everybody kind of was on the moon or on the rocket ship to the moon for Josh Downs' last offseason. It doesn't seem like it's changing now with Adonai Mitchell. I mean, just another guy not running routes in Pierce's way. I would put Dobbs and Pierce kind of at the same level. I honestly would just, if I was a contender looking to add this type of depth, I'd just check which one's cheaper and go that route. I think that would be the way I would do it.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And a quick note on Alec Pierce, he's the man beater on that team. So if you have any
I gotta
way,
say, man, you have been. I let a lot of them go, but that one was wild. He's the man. Like you had some wild statements during this episode specifically. I don't know if you were doing them trying to get me to crack or what, but that one was wild. I can't let that one escape, man. Come on.
I'm just gonna try now harder. No. I said harder.
Man.
No, anyways.
Yeah.
No, but he is the guy to beat the man defense here. And if you have any way to track that, we'll try and keep you guys posted here on when he goes into those matchups. But play him on those ones because that's where he's gonna go. All right, next up we got some tight ends. Juwan Johnson, Zach Ertz, Hunter Henry. These guys are gross. Which one's your favorite?
It's probably Juwan because he's the one we've seen it the most. If Daniels was around, it would be Seckers because they have a good connection, especially around the the goal line. But I think it's Juwan. I don't know what we're gonna get with Shuck and him, but Shaheed vacating all the targets that he was seeing. He just figures like maybe the guy, or maybe it's just all Taysom Hill running up the middle. Who knows? But it's probably John Johnson if I had to pick. I mean, as a contender, I really hope I'm not trying to buy a tight end and not at this level, but you never know. There's crazy leagues out there, crazy scoring. So I would go Johnson.
Yeah, I almost didn't want to put the tight ends in here because of that. But I mean, if we're talking best ball, like it's sometimes you can ride dirty at the tight end position and just roster 4 or 5 of these type of players. I think I would choose Juwan Johnson too, just for the target void that Rashid Shaheed left. But I also like Zach Ertz, and you mentioned Jaden Daniels in their connection, but Marcus Mariota loves to target the tight end. And he's actually favored Ben Sinnott, and in most of his starts in Washington, but Zach Ertz is still the guy. And I have no fear in buying into him. Okay, let's get into these next. We have those identified rental players here. On those ones, we can also package up some depth with future picks for some difference makers. And some guys, I'm just going to breeze over these guys, which I think that you could buy into here for the quarterbacks. Jackson Dart and Lamar Jackson, they're the rushing QBs with that kind of upside. They both have really great playoff schedules. I think one of these guys makes sense, especially for Lamar, of taking like Jaden Daniels in a first if you are lacking or if he just kind of went out on you. I think moving him to get into Lamar with the first is more than doable. Jackson Dart, that one's probably going to be a little bit harder because I think the hype on him is just so high. It's going to be hard to get into him. But do what you can. I think those guys are clear buys to get the difference makers if you can find a way to do it. For wide receivers, I put in Justin Jefferson and Devonta Smith. Again, these guys have really good playoff schedules, and I think these are the difference makers that you want on your team. Again, one high-end one in Justin Jefferson and one lower-end one in Devonta Smith. I think Malik Neighbors is maybe your ticket into Justin Jefferson. And Devonta Smith, I think that's a tough one. But if you can find a way to get into them, maybe you can move like a Jmo and a second, or another wide receiver too, like a T Higgins or in a second or something, to get in Devonta Smith, just to get that production back on your squad. I think that's a smart move. Running backs here, I like Genty and Christian McCaffrey. Again, these are all based on playoff schedules. These guys they're gonna go on a tear in the playoffs. CMC is a huge rental though. I think that one comes with a lot of risk. You'll be giving up a lot of dynasty value there, so be careful of buying into him. Genty, on the other hand, is going to be harder to get into because of the dynasty value he holds. But I think if we see a quarterback change there with Geno Smith getting injured in this past game, I think he could see a lot of work and have a really good schedule there. So real quick here, man, a couple sentences on any one of these guys if you like them, but let's try to keep this moving.
No, yeah, I like all these names. I think they're the type of hammer plays at the trade deadline where if you're really very solid, very looking like you're the number one, this is kind of the moves that we've talked about where you kind of slam the door shut. Like maybe quarterback is your weakness and you slam it shut with a Lamar. You slam it shut with a running back like CMC, those type of things. So I love it. I love all these names.
Great. All right, man. I have a question on here, and it kind of ties into this packaging up for depth plus future picks. And I know you're the guy to ask because you're really smart with this kind of thing. So how do we trade into these injured studs, or how do we trade away injured studs for these production assets now without tanking our dynasty value on our team?
Yeah, I think it's a really fine line to do. I think specifically one of the easiest players to do it with this year is Neighbors, because I feel like everybody still views him in the tier that they view him, which is like the upper elite of the wide receivers. So he's the easiest, where you could probably just take him and flip him for a CeeDee Lamb, a JSN, maybe, those type of players who are in the same tier. And I think that just speaks to how you could do this effectively. Like if you're taking your injured young player like Jaden Daniels or Neighbors, and then you're going and buying like 4 guys that are 27 years old, like you really need to be sure you're going to win it. But I think it's just a lot easier trading across like the aisle, so to speak. Like take a Joe Burrow and trade him for a guy you view in a similar term, because then you're like, it's kind of like the Brock Bowers Joe Burrow trade we did, where we're just the person taking in the injured player, all they want to do is have a player for the future, but also take off points from their team, right? If most leagues are max points for in Dynasty at this point to determine pick order. And then another thing you do is trade for young players, or maybe not so young, but like year 3-4. One guy that really came to mind was Jalen Waddle, who I really believe in, and I think he's not getting traded tells us that he's the future there in Miami and the future one, and he's looking and playing like it. But I think there's still a lot of stink, especially with him being on the Dolphins and Tua being the quarterback. And every time they're on prime time, they look awful. Waddle plus, right? Like what can you get on top of Waddle if you're trading away Neighbors? And those are the type of packages, like you still, don't want to sell out completely if you have one of these players. And also, man, like there's also the idea, like live to see another day. Like if it's not working, I don't want to trade Neighbors for Devontae Adams, AJ Brown, and I don't know, something else. Like it's okay to live to the next year and just be like, oh, well, you know what? I still have Neighbors. That's awesome. Like I don't need to do this trade, right? That's just a thing that you always have to come to the conclusion. Like just trading him just to trade him may not always be the path forward, even as a contender.
Oh, so smart. So wise. I appreciate it, man. No, I knew you're the right guy to go to. All right, and then last here, I just wanted to identify some trade ammo players who are on contending squads can use to make a great trade And I think these guys may hit the mark here because I purposefully went through and tried to take young guys who were either injured or had a really good prospect profile and were just underperforming. So I think Cam Scatterboo kind of tops that list there. I think a rebuilder may be interested in him. I would certainly be interested in him on any kind of team, and more so as a value flip, which I'll get into later. But Woody Marks, I think also some people might believe in him, and he's in a spot where he might retain a role next year and keep it going. Trey Harris, there was a big hype for him coming out of college, and he hasn't really done much with the Chargers. I personally am very bleak on his outlook with the Chargers. It just feels really crowded there, and I don't really see where he fits in to the role there. Matthew Golden, again, huge hive. I've never been one to believe in him, so I won't have him on my squad to trade away, but maybe you do. I think he makes a good contender. Again, Brian Thomas Jr., if you're contending and you need points on your squad, he's one of those high-end guys that you could probably trade off of to get into something a little more elite. You're probably obviously selling low on him, but do what it takes to win that championship. I think he makes a great trade away. And these last guys, Keon Coleman and Ricky Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall in particular, I do believe in, but I don't think it's going to be there this season. I think he's just going to be battling injury and it's going to be bad. And Keon Coleman, if anyone believes in him, ship him off for whatever you can get. Any of these guys you like, or is there anyone you'd like to add here?
No, I mean, on Ricky Pearsall, I'm just the 49ers. Is it just that they have too many people on IR? Like, why did Pearsall and
All their IR
and
slots are full.
yeah, and Purdy like not go on IR? Like, these are the guys I'm wondering. Like, I don't know. And then your coach today had like a really weird. They asked him about Ricky Pearsall shooting jump shots in the locker room. It was one of those weird things that happens in the NFL. But no, I agree. I think these are all good value flips. Like you said, I think the most interesting is obviously Brian Thomas, just because of what he did last season. If you're a contender and you take your Brian Thomas in a first, what does that really get you? To the right person, it might get you a CeeDee Lamb. It might get you. Any of those guys. I think JSN maybe is hitting a stratosphere that's impossible, but Justin Jefferson, who's underperforming, maybe he's on the wrong team. Those sorts of things. I definitely like that.
Yeah, no, I love it. All right, let's flip the script here and go into some rebuilding discussion where we're going to be trying to sell production that doesn't align with your window. And we're going to talk about some top trade away targets here. And I think the first, honestly, you're going to see a lot of overlap with what the competing windows above, because there's a reason that you can get these trades done, because what the rebuilders are trying to get off their squad, the contenders want on their squad. And I think first I wanted to tackle was old producing QBs. One name that joins this list that wasn't up there before, I guess two names, are Matt Stafford and Aaron Rodgers, and then we also have Joe Flacco and Jacoby Brissett, or smoked brisket.
Brisket got that sauce.
Gotta debut that drop a couple times while we got it, man. Yeah, I mean, I moved Matt Stafford in a league the other day on a team where I went all in and it didn't work out. And he was on my squad, and I didn't really know what to do with him. I feel like I had a good window to sell him here, so I ended up trading him for Quentin Johnston, which I wasn't really sure how to feel about it, but I felt Quentin Johnston was going to be appealing to more teams. Matt Stafford was, I had maybe 2 or 3 teams that I could trade with, and no one was really looking to give me anything of real value for him. So I felt like that was a good exit strategy to get off of him there, and that's just one example of how to do that. Yeah, any of these guys that you would be looking to get rid of on a rebuild a squad particularly?
Yeah, I mean, any of them, all of them, pretty much. I mean, like Stafford might have a career like continued, but if you're rebuilding, unless you think and it's a super flex and you think your window's like next year, I'm probably just trying to ship him because he could spontaneously retire at any point. I do think, we're in the rebuilding section, but if Matthew Stafford is stranded on a team somewhere, please go get him as a contender. I honestly think he's going to be very, very good. But yeah, no. With these guys, yeah, like any of them, whatever you can move them for, I'm probably moving them for. Especially in single quarterback in superflex, they might be like Stafford. Definitely more under consideration. I might want to hold on to him if I don't get a decent value. Otherwise, all the other guys are. All three of them may not even be in the NFL next year. So it's better to get a fourth, let's say, right, than to be dropping them in the next offseason when they're all not in the NFL.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, these next guys here, we'll just kind of name off some wide receivers that are aging, and they may not have a home in the next couple years. And I think DJ Moore kind of fits that. Debo Samuel, who's kind of a mercenary for the Washington Commanders right now. Maybe he plays himself into a contract. And then Michael Pittman I put on here because I think he's a good sell candidate. He's pretty young still. I think he's only 28, maybe 29. So he still has, some good years left, or good tread on the tires, let's say. But he's playing at such a high production right now that I think you can actually get a lot for him, and I think it's a smart move for a rebuilding team if you have him on there. Are you liking any of these guys to sell, or do you have anybody else on a list that you could kind of add to here?
Yeah, I mean, I think Pittman was a great shout just because if he's on your team as a rebuilder, he's not doing anything for you, and this might be his best season ever, and people are willing to pay for something they don't believe in when it's happening rather than later. Like somebody might turn around in the offseason and look at Michael Pittman and be like, yeah, he's not a top 7, top 8, whatever he ends up finishing wide receiver. Like we all know that was a flash in the pan. I'm not paying you that price. But when it's happening in season, those are the times to strike, and you can, you make a crazy trade where someone really, really values Pittman and then they think it's going to continue and then he never performs at this level again. Even if Daniel Jones were to get, a long-term contract there, I just think you could be seeing the best season of Michael Pittman, and that's like the best time to trade away, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the time. DJ Moore is super scary. If you held him going into this season, I would be very worried. His numbers are not great. It definitely looks like it's Odunze's offense. It's hard to say that after Odunze got 0 catches last week, but I don't think DJ Moore is there for the long term. I think they're moving in a different direction. So he's really scary. So if you can garner some value and maybe not lose too much, DJ Moore is definitely another guy that I'm definitely wanting to move on before the offseason hits, because the offseason news I think could be pretty worrying for DJ Moore in terms of like Colston Loveland hype, Luther Burden, right, is the wide receiver drafted hype that could happen in minicamp, and DJ Moore just continuing to get pushed down that depth chart.
Yeah, he just kind of fades out. He might be one that you need to package up with someone else to like another guy we have noted here as like Travis Kelce. If you could put Travis Kelce and DJ Moore in a deal and get back like, I don't know, a second and a third, I think I'll probably take the second and the third there. Let's talk about some running backs here, some older ones who are overperforming. This one's interesting. I wasn't really sure how to lean on this one because he might be playing himself into a contract. And it's actually 2 guys. I'll just put them together: Javonte Williams and J.K. Dobbins. What are your thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think Harvey is definitely the future play there, but I think Dobbins to some extent, but he's only on a 1 year. I don't know what type of contract. Kind of same with Javonte, but I think Javonte, everything seems like the Cowboys like him there, and I don't think his market would be too crazy. So both the guys might just stay where they are. And I'm not looking to hold any running back of this kind of caliber or age, really. Like, unless like it's like my windows next year, I have like 5 picks. I'm really ready, and these guys are going to be kind of glue pieces next year. But in no way am I trying to hold them if my window for competing isn't starting next year.
Yeah, and that's fair. And their value is going to be worth more in the point scoring season. So I think now is the time to move them. You'd be gambling, hoping that they get a contract in the offseason that you can flip them for probably similar value that you could get right now. Okay, cool. Let's move into targeting injured or devalued studs, talking like Burrow, Neighbors, Daniels. I think we kind of had some example deals for those guys in the previous segment. But I have some other guys here that kind of fit that bill that I feel like Could be good rebuilding buys here. We talked about Ricky Pearsall a bit. I believe in the talent. I don't think he bounces back this season. I think that knee is just going to continue to bother him, but I'm curious to see where it'll go next season with him. I don't think Juwan Jennings is going to be there. Brandon Ayuk comes back, but to what level, I'm not really sure. If I can put Pearsall on my squad, seeing what he did earlier this season, I'm going to do it for pretty cheap. He feels like a guy that you can kind of add there in that sense. I don't know if you have any strong feelings on Pearsall.
Yeah, I'm pretty lukewarm on him. I didn't think his start to the season was nearly as impressive. I know we've kind of talked about him off air. So it just, I don't know, it's not that exciting, but he's definitely a player who might just be a necessity in the offense, that always kind of seems to produce fantasy points. So if he's out there and he's cheap, and he's going to be one of those glue guys we're always talking about, I definitely don't mind, kicking the tires and seeing, maybe somebody's pissed off of having him. I think a guy we talked about earlier in the segment, top rebuilding buys, Breece Hall, right? I was mentioning how I think he's kind of like a future, maybe a couple years down the road. And it's always hard to play that way because the NFL, especially with running backs, moves so fast and things happen so quickly. But I definitely think, there's brighter days for Breece Hall ahead, especially if he finishes out. The Jets are just horrible the rest of the season. And he finishes out the season pretty badly as we come up to this trade deadline in a few weeks. He puts up a couple more stinkers.
Yeah, no, I really like Breece Hall. I think he's a play maybe if you're looking to exit a rebuild here in the next year or two. I think he's a good stash. The next guy on the list, I've been shouting it from the rooftop all season and just been continuing. Chris Olave. I've been looking to get him everywhere. I feel like the narrative around him is going to change next season, but right now the value is just so low. I do think he has top 12 wide receiver upside, talent and skill, and he just needs a quarterback to let it shine. So yeah, go buy Olave, get him on your squad if you can. He's hard because he's still producing, so it's going to be hard to get him off a contending squad, I feel like, but he might be a guy you could flip like Michael Pittman for or something like that.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Next guy on the list, we talked about him a little bit in reference to DJ Moore, but Luther Burden III, one of my favorite guys. I think he is the DJ Moore of the Bears in the future, but obviously with a lot more juice and a lot more to offer for that offense. We haven't quite seen it this year, but he's actually battling injury right now. So that might be an even easier way to get into him if you can. And then this guy I haven't given up on, man. In the previous offseason, there was a lot of hype and steam for Ben Sinnott to follow the path of Trey McBride and take over for Zach Ertz and the Washington Commanders offense. I still believe in that. Zach Ertz is, on the last year of his deal here. Who knows if he gets re-signed? It's hard to say, but Ben Sinnott could be the heir to the throne for that lucrative tight end position of the Washington Commanders. I don't know, man. We haven't really talked about this, but how do you feel about Ben Sinnott?
Yeah, I feel like he's I don't know. I think his hype got killed when when what's his name re-signed Ertz. You were just saying when Ertz re-signed this offseason, it kind of just killed his hype. I think as long as Ertz is there, it's not going to be a good time. But I think it's for what it will cost you. Why not, right? Like might as well do it. I think then. You wanted to talk about some of these quarterbacks. I'm just going to get it out of the way. I'm not really interested in probably any of them, just because I know that's where we're hitting next. And just to get my point out there quick, I mean, Brock Purdy as your quarterback too in a super flex is definitely something I'm interested in because I think he can perform from that role once healthy. This year's just kind of a wash due to his injury, but the other guys I know you got on there, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Cam Ward. I'm not interested in any sort of way.
Yeah, those first two guys, Cam Ward and Bryce Young, I think I'm kind of with you on them. But I kind of like CJ Stroud. I think we have a different outlook of the Texans here, but I think they're an offensive line away from being good, a really competitive team. So I'll buy low on CJ Stroud when we saw what he can do, in his rookie season. Okay, we have this last topic here. I'm just kind of breeze through that because we're running long here, but investment vehicles, meaning guys whose value are really low now, but as soon as the season ends, it's gonna flip, I think, and you'll be able to increase your investment almost immediately. So we've already made points on a lot of these guys, so hopefully this just rings true. And I'm just gonna read through this list really quick for you guys. But it's Brian Thomas Jr., Cam Scatterbo, Chris Olave, CJ Stroud, Rome Odunze, Brandon Ayuk, Harold Fannin, and Isaiah Likely. Those last two guys are just tight ends that I like, that I think are going to only gain in value in the offseason, especially Mark Andrews on the last year of his contract. I think Isaiah Likely is going to take over that role and kind of go forward. All right, man, did you have any thoughts on that, or should we just roll right into the outro here?
The only guy I would add is somebody I've been pretty excited about personally, and we talked about in the episode as well, is just Waddle. I would throw him in there. I don't think his value has returned, and I think in the offseason when Tyreek's gone, it's really going to spike up.
I love it. Yeah, I'm in on Waddle. All right, man, let's wrap this thing up. Another great show in the books. Running long as usual. That's what I got too much to say. Sorry, guys. I was telling Jose earlier, I feel like I got more words that I want to get off my lips than we have time in a day, but hopefully you guys are here for it, and thank you for tuning in here. We love you guys. We got more coming your way. Look for the debrief dropping on Wednesday here, and with that, I'll turn it over to Jose to sign us off here with the last 20 seconds.
Yeah, guys, as always, please YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, whatever you can do to get us in some engagement. Hit us up, comment, what are you thinking about it? We're also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, guys. Thank you again for listening and being part of our experience, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys. Have a good one. Enjoy week 10 and win.